Hello, Sandwich. My name is Greg Anderson. Welcome in to the outside of the Clark Haddad Building here on Dewey Ave, 16 Dewey Ave, in fact, a building that dates back to 1885. Here's what we're doing today, and it's really an interesting discussion, and I hope you enjoy this because it not only will be of interest to you as a member of the community, but it is a significant vote that will be coming up in the special town meeting on November 21st, and this is an opportunity to educate the community. We are going to really talk about this building, its future, its opportunity for the future, and this really comes to you in collaboration with the Sandwich Historical Commission, of which I am the chairman of that commission, as well as the Friends of the Clark Haddad Building, and of course Sandwich Community Television, which is standing here helping us with this program literally as we speak. So today we're going to talk about the future, what it takes to open this as a viable functioning building that can serve the greater community in Sandwich, and how you as a member of the community can make a difference on November 21st at the special town meeting. Let me first give you a little bit of a description of this building if you do not know, and I want to give thanks to my friend Don Bailey, who is a part of the Sandwich Historical Commission, for writing this. And this is really a description, the 1885 Sand Hill School Clark Haddad Memorial Building article that he wrote on sandwichhistory.org, and Don really puts a nice story together. This building was originally created, it was kind of born out of a smaller building located nearby from the Boston and Sandwich Glass Company, where they had a need for children of employees to have a school to attend to. In 1828, a small school was built so close to the factory that it worked well, but then as the factory expanded, there was a need for more space on the property, so they moved the school to this location. As that congestion was alleviated and this building was built, it was in 1851, a new larger school was built right here on this property. It collapsed during the construction, and a stronger new building was built in 1885, much more solid, because guess what? It still stands today. The building was later used outside of the school, especially with the wing school that became a part of the academic environment of the school. The building became used as the American Legion Post. It was ultimately used for the Sandwich Public Schools up until 2007. I think the superintendent's office was in here. So this is a building that, as you can tell by the pictures, it is still around and it still has opportunity for us. I want to introduce you to my guest, really the brain trust, if you will, behind the future, hopefully, of the Clark Haddad Building, Joanne Westerhouse. She is chair of the Friends of the Clark Haddad Building. Thank you for coming out here on this chilly fall day. How are you doing?
Good, but I think we should eliminate brain trust if you go back and edit this tape.
Okay, well, we're not editing, but I duly noted. I understand. But seriously, you have really become an advocate for this building. What brought you to wanting to help so much?
Well, I live about 3 blocks down that way and have watched this building. I was part of the vote in, I think it was 2012, at town meeting that we voted to keep the building. I almost voted to sell it, and then I thought, wait a minute, I'm part of all these different groups and we have no space to have our meetings. So I reconsidered and voted to not sell the building. And since then, I've worked on a small committee with the town, working with the architect, Lisa Hassler, Matt Schimmel, Pat Ellis, and Doug Lapp. And so we worked on getting the estimates done and everything. Then in May, it didn't make the vote. It got the simple majority, but not a 2/3 majority to use the CPC money. I was disappointed, but then the questions that were asked and the concerns that were raised were very valid.
Okay.
And I felt somebody should go out and address the concerns. The main ones are, would it be able to sustain itself and pay for its costs? The second one was, okay, so it can pay for its costs now. What happens when we need a new roof down the road?
Right.
Who's going to pay for that? You don't want to keep throwing money. Nobody in Sandwich wants to do that. These are my taxes too, so I feel strongly about how they're used. So this summer in July, I just put a notice in the paper if anyone's interested in getting together and talking about renovating the building and answering those questions, would they come meet at the library?
So tell me what the Friends of the Clark Haddad Committee is all about. Tell me how many members roughly do you have that have expressed an interest in helping?
Yeah, 37, 38. They come and go depending on when they're able to make meetings or not.
Okay.
But people came either because they supported the use of the future building, they came because they had historical ties in some way, they'd gone to school here or something, or they came because they were not in favor of the building and wanted to see what we were doing and how we were addressing questions. So it made for some interesting meetings.
How much of a, we have the wing school, we had a selectman election recently. We have these hot issues that come before us voters all the time. How hot of an issue is this?
Well, I think it got overshadowed at the May meeting because of the fire safety building discussion.
Right.
We've got the beach, we have wastewater coming up. This is not number one on anybody's list, I don't think. But the building sitting here, I believe it's very usable. I believe there are a lot of groups in town that need space.
Yeah.
So from just a logical, functional standpoint, to me it makes sense to use some of our CPC money to renovate it. That's what that money, one of the purposes. And I think people didn't understand in May that it would not mean additional taxes.
Right. So I want to touch on what this does mean in terms of my vote going to the November 21st town meeting.
Okay.
But when you're looking at this from the perspective of it is not the shiniest object getting everyone's attention. That's well understood. No one wants this to be the big shiny object.
Right.
However, we as a society tend to focus on the shiny object and then we forget about these things. And one of the reasons why we want to have this discussion here is to amplify the efforts. Here is a group of 36-ish people led by you and your initiatives and your drive and your compassion here that is bringing this up for discussion. What are some of I want to talk a little bit about the outreach that you've done as a function of the committee, but tell me what some of the misconceptions are about this and about this effort. Before we started shooting, a neighbor walked by and said, "I'm in, I'm voting, I'm supporting this." What about the other members of the town that just don't understand? What are the misconceptions?
Well, I think one big question is, can it pay for itself? If you open the doors, are you going to cover the costs? How are you going to pay for the initial renovation? I think people were concerned that it would mean taxes, and it doesn't. The CPC money is sitting there for purposes like this, for historical buildings, for open space, for affordable housing. Those are the three main purposes. Mm-hmm. So this is a good fit for the CPC money. Mm-hmm. And if it gets approved at the November town meeting, there's still room with the CPC money to do other projects. So it's not this instead of something else.
Right.
That there can be additional projects. There's a concern about, okay, fine, we pay for it now. What happens when the roof needs replacing, the shingling needs to be done again, the boiler needs replacing? We're talking down the road. Is somebody going to come back to the residents and say, now we need more money? Mm-hmm. So part of our approach was to look at long-term capital improvements too, and capital reserve funds. So I think those were the concerns. Where's the money coming from? Is it coming out of the pocket? Is it new taxes? Will it pay for itself? Yeah. Will anybody use it?
Yeah.
And so our mission really was to gather data.
Yeah.
We formed in July. We're not a long-standing group.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
formed the middle of July. At the end of July, we went to the selectmen's meeting and said, we would like to be a research group, gather data, come back to you. So we spent 8 weeks gathering all the information, and we went back and presented to them.
Yeah.
And said, these are our findings.
Okay. You have had good, fine collaboration with the town, with the selectmen, with Bud's office. I mean, is that a
Right.
fair characterization? They seem to be open.
Yes, yes. I think they feel that there is a need for space in town. They even have problems sometimes locating their town meetings, their committee meetings and things like that.
Yeah.
And so I think they see we own this already, we can renovate it, people can use it.
Yeah.
I think they were welcoming the data and the input because they're on so many hot topics. They don't
Yeah.
have the bandwidth to go out and do the kind of research that we did.
Right. So speaking of going out and doing things, let's talk a little bit about the outreach. So you formed in July this committee, and being part of the emails that you send, which are very thorough and follow up, and here's what we're doing in the next meeting, you did put together an outreach effort.
Right.
Tell me a little bit about that and what you as a committee did to do outreach on this initiative to the greater community.
We actually divided the whole committee up into 4 separate committees depending on what people's interests were, and the first one was community outreach. At the town meeting, people got up and said, oh, I think this building would be used. Oh, I think other people have said they have buildings, community centers that have been used. But that's guesswork, and nobody's going to vote money over guesswork. So the community outreach identified, we put together a spreadsheet of probably about 60 organizations, and we contacted 42 of them. And this was a one-on-one contact. The group put together a short survey, 4 quick questions. Assume somebody's going to hang up on you if you don't ask quick questions.
Right, right.
Do you know about the Clark Haddad renovation effort? If it's renovated, would you use it? If your group would use it, how much would you use it? And the last question is, if it comes up for vote again, would you vote to support it? So we went to these 42 organizations. The list came from knowing groups that we were all on, plus going to the library is really like a community center for Sandwich. And so
Yeah.
we went to their calendar and looked at April through July reservations and got group names of organizations.
So you're talking about nonprofit organizations, town committees. Did you talk to any private businesses?
We did.
Okay.
We talked to some like Beth's Bakery. Well, actually, she approached us after the vote got voted down in May and said, I was so counting on you getting that building, somebody getting that building and renovating it, because she's approached for things like wedding showers, baby showers, and group parties and things like
Yeah.
that. There's no place to host things like that in town.
Yeah, yeah.
There are other businesses too that could welcome this size space.
So what type of feedback did you get from that survey, if you will?
Okay, what I did was compile it on a spreadsheet and totaled the number of hours, and this became the income portion of what went into our operational budget. We put together an operating budget, we put together an entire business plan, and so this fed the income portion of it. We did not consider things that we couldn't quantify. I think it'll be used a lot once the doors are open for all kinds of groups.
Right.
Like it did when the Legion had it. There were plays here, there were all kinds of anniversary parties. We couldn't quantify that, so we
Yeah.
just stuck with the hard numbers, plugged it in. Then I went and got the utility costs from Bud and any other costs that we could figuring in the maintenance outside, the snow plowing, the grass mowing, and those things, so that
Yeah.
this building would be self-sufficient and self-sustaining.
Right.
And what we found was with only a 15% occupancy, which I think is very conservative. The building would pay for itself the first year and sustain itself. Plus, we put together, with the help of some contractors, a long-term plan. When is the roof going to need replacing? When would the shingling need to be done again? How about the windows? How about the boiler? And we put together a capital reserve fund and worked backwards and said, what do we have to save every year so that when these items come up, we have the money in reserve for them already, a sinking fund.
Sure.
And we found that the very first year, those things could be covered too.
Yeah.
So that eliminates the question of, would we have to come back and ask for money again sometime?
Which, as a voter, that would be a concern. All of a sudden I say yes on opening, and then in 5 years, I'm going to get it in the pocketbook again when there's a need for capital improvements. Right. So you've really gone through, I have read your business plan. It's pretty extensive.
Well, the business plan, I think, is great for focusing your thinking and thinking, well, how would you manage it? What would you charge in rates? That's one of the big concerns. There is space around Sandwich, but there are so many groups that are either nonprofit or just a social organization. They don't have money to pay for. Town hall is $175 for 4 hours. The Glass Museum, when I was in Newcomers, we used to rent that, and I think that was $275 for an evening.
Yeah.
So all these different groups are kind of scurrying and looking for something that's a reasonable price. Yeah. So we were pricing out and estimating our rental income based on $50 for a 4-hour window. Right now, I'm part of Garden Club, and we're meeting in the Masonic Hall. They were very gracious about letting groups meet in there. What if they need to renovate the building? Where would we go? I don't know. Right. The Newcomers Club has been in different locations at different times. That's about 120 people in town. Yeah. Right now, they go to the BBC and in one of the side rooms. The restaurants have been great, but look at what Sandwich goes through. All these groups, they're meeting in homes, they're meeting in restaurants, they're meeting all over. We have a building that could work. Yeah. So why not use the money that's set aside for a good purpose, make a community center out of this? Yeah. I'm also in the Arts Alliance, and we have classes at the library, but we couldn't have them this summer because the library was being used as a library. Right, right. For great reading programs. But the library is so generous to every group in town and lets them meet there for nothing. Yeah, yeah. When you look at, from the historical commission perspective, I'm intrigued at how the community views the rallying around a historical asset or not. Oh, it's the old wing building. Let's just let it go. It's we don't need that. Oh, Clark Haddad, it's just a pain. Why invest? We have other historical assets around town. But do you feel that the historical element of this building bolsters this, or is it just it happens to be a building? Oh, no, I think that's a plus. I look at it. I'm from private industry, so I look at the functional, logical side. Yeah, sure. But I also live on the site of the glass factory. I'm on the corner of Jarvis and Factory. So when I dig in my garden, I'm unearthing bits and shards from the glass factory. Nice. And so I think a lot of people in the area have a tie to the building, and people came saying, oh, I went to school here. Oh, we used to have plays here when it was the Legion. Yeah. The fact that it's one of the few buildings that can tie us to the actual glass factory, I think that's amazing. Yeah. I don't see it as a museum. I see it more as a community center that, by the way, has these wonderful pluses. Has a historical connection to it. Our group has always talked about paying homage to its history and there's some great old pictures. I don't know if you've seen the one where the kids are all sitting on the front steps. Yes. Or the one when the Legion had it and all the 50s cars are pulled up almost like it's a Arnold's Drive-In kind of thing. Yeah. But I think saving those pictures that are in the archives and putting them on the walls here, no matter what group gets to use this building, I think it's wonderful to include the history. It makes you feel
Yeah.
closer to what went on here.
And more connected.
Yes.
So talk to me about the condition of the building. You know, right now I'm looking at it, I can see the blinds are a little askew and we got some paint coming off, and
Yeah, it's
you
not
know,
lovely.
yeah, it's not lovely. But tell me about the inside. What is this building?
The
Structurally, I should say.
yeah, it's solid inside. I think if you film inside, you'll see that it's surprisingly better shape than the outside would leave you to believe. I think people might feel differently if the outside had been kept up and painted. Then you'd say, oh, well, this doesn't look bad. But looking at the outside, you assume it's bad inside, and it's really not.
Okay.
There are some things to be done to double up the rafters for strength. For long term, we don't want to have another 1884 collapse.
Yes, exactly.
But in general, I was surprised the first time I went in. I thought, wow, this is really pretty solid. And that's one of the reasons for having the open house, so that people could come in. There's so much light in the building because of all the windows. And yes, the windows will be replaced. They need replacing. But when you look at it, you think, wow, I can picture having our group here.
Yeah.
I can picture having a guest speaker come in to the garden club and talk to them about blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I can picture having a class here, an author talk. We could co-sponsor some things with Titcoms and have author talks here.
Great idea.
The one room, let's talk about size. It's about 1,800 square feet. The one room could handle, the way the architect configured it, about 100 people at tables and lined up for speakers.
Yeah.
There's a wall down the middle, and then the second room, smaller, probably about 30 people. So you could have multiple functions going on. When we sized it out and did the income estimation, we based it on, one group at a time.
Sure.
Then there's a small kitchenette. You wouldn't be ever renting it out to people that needed to prepare meals.
Right. Sure.
But for Garden Club has refreshments. Newcomers has
Sure.
refreshments. So
some coffee over there
Yeah,
and some cookies
yeah.
over there, and
yes.
you've got a nice clean place.
One of the things that a gentleman on our committee that has been looking at more long-term things said, you might think about someday using this for small conferences. People like to come to Sandwich because it's so quaint, it has great museums, it's just charming.
Yeah.
Why not offer something, a small space where you can have a small conference during the day and then wander, eat at our restaurants, sleep
Yeah.
at the B&Bs. So
Well,
I think it
yeah.
could have long-range economic implications.
Well, there is, and you had mentioned earlier, once the vote on November 21st comes about, and then we're off to the next step, hopefully, there is marketing initiatives. There is a need for ideas. There is a need for someone to sit down and put pen to paper and really map this out, and contractors, and work with the town. So there is a lot to do beyond that, which is very exciting for
Right.
people in the community who want to contribute. So I think that's important. We're on the run up to the 21st. You have, based on when this airs, you will have or have had 2 open houses, Sunday, November 13th from 12 to 3, and Saturday, November 19th from 9 to 12. Tell me what your intent is with the open houses.
Well, to not conflict with any Patriots game.
Thank God.
And so we picked a Sunday where they don't play till 8:30 at night.
Yes, good.
Because we didn't even want to run up close to the 4:30 time.
Right.
The intent is to invite these organizations that we've talked to, come see the building. Now that you see it, do you think you would vote to support it because
Right.
you see that your group could have things here?
Yeah.
Some of the people who have meetings elsewhere, could you picture having an event here? Do one of your fundraising things.
Right.
Do Santa's pancake breakfast for children like Kiwanis used to do.
Yeah, sure.
So we want groups to see, but we also invite the residents to come see. We also would like there are going to be some people who just don't want to see the building restored, who don't believe it's the right thing for the
Yeah.
town to do. And we welcome them to come too,
Yeah.
and to see and take a look and maybe talk to some of the other people who are here that do feel
Yeah.
there's a need. Scouts, I think, are all over the place. I don't know where they're meeting. Scouts would be on our list of no charge for them to come in, but in turn we can see community involvement by saying, would you come help us rake up the leaves in the fall, or
Right.
we're going to put some plants in, would you help us do something? Or
Sure.
so I just see it as a great collaboration effort in the community.
So now we're going to November 21st. I walk in, I'm a town voter. I want to feel committed. I want to feel like my tax dollars are going to something. The CPC funds are in reserve, they're there. A vote yes on that evening, on that warrant, is essentially a vote towards restoring the building.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
as simple as that.
Yes, it's a vote to go ahead and renovate the building using CPC funds.
Okay.
That's exactly what it is.
Great.
The next step, if it is approved, and I really hope it is this
Yeah.
time, would be to go out and write up a contractor's bid proposal
Right.
to go ahead. And I think at that point, there are opportunities to save money on the overall cost, because when you don't know what a group is doing with a building, you have to make the overall blanket umbrella estimated cost, and that's what it is, an estimate.
Yeah.
You have to make that broad enough to allow for whatever is coming in.
Sure.
Once a group is established that's going to use the building, then I think you can get to specifics and say, you know, this is not bad. We can make use of this.
Right.
So I think there are cost savings to be had overall, and just because a number is set, I don't think you have to assume that we're going to run up to that number. I
Yeah.
would hope that whoever the group is that's using it, along with the town, does due diligence and keeps a lid on this and is very cost conscious.
Right.
This is my money, this is your money. I'd like
Yeah.
to see it saved so that other groups and other projects can be done with the CPC
Yeah.
funds.
Well,
we would like people that day to express an interest in continuing on the committee and
Right.
working.
I will tell you, being a guy that's worked in marketing, operations, private industries, I commend you and your group, the Friends of this building, to, you know, for all of the work that you've done in terms of doing your research, scrubbing the numbers, poking your own holes in it to see if it's going to pass your own muster. You're in front of the finance committee, the selectmen, you're engaged in conversations with naysayers and those who are, you know, concerned. And I know that you've had a couple people say, now that I've talked to you, Joanne, I'm thinking a little bit differently, and I appreciate that. Hopefully this helps in that effort. Education, you know, I always say knowledge is, you know, people say knowledge is power. I always say knowledge is potential power. It's what you do with it that really matters. And so I hope that by way of education and this outreach, there can be a real good understanding of what November 21st vote will translate to and what that opportunity is.
You never want to just overwhelm at town meeting and get a vote through because you had more people from your special interest group.
Yeah.
That's what I didn't want to happen. I wanted people to listen. If they still vote against it, I respect their decision. But we
Yeah.
just wanted to provide enough information to say, here's the information that was missing. And we personally believe, based on numbers, that
Yeah.
this can happen and work.
Good.
But I do want to thank the committee that worked on this. When you think about it, it's just a bunch of residents. It wasn't architects. We weren't being paid as a feasibility study.
You're not appointed by the town. You didn't
No.
run for it. You
No.
just gathered.
Yes.
Right.
And these people worked hard
Yes.
to put these numbers together because they believe. So,
Yeah.
and I thank you for the opportunity to come today and to share this.
Well, you are welcome. I want to shake your hand, but I also want to see how cold that hand is. It's a little chilly. It's a little chilly,
The snow
Joanne.
didn't happen, so that was good.
Thank you, Joanne Westerhouse, the chair of the Friends of the Clark Haddad Building. Make sure you do get to the town hall meeting. I think it is at 7 o'clock. Is it at 7 o'clock?
7 o'clock, the high school, November 21st.
Okay.
Please come, no matter how you feel.
Please come and participate. My name is Greg Anderson. I appreciate your attention on this issue, and I hope it's been educational, informative, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.